this came out of basically the garbage. And let me just put in number 3, 4, 2. Now, what's number is that?
It's here, maybe,
Oh, well, here we go.
whatever's left.
So there we go. We have all the plaster of Paris mold, and then we take the segments off and put them together. And once the segments are down, then we can discard this. And we can fill these segments up with clay.
So you slabs, then?
Yeah.
You're not talking pouring?
No slabs. I tried pouring. Good luck. I just couldn't. I just had all kinds of trouble pouring. But this works out very well, and you'll see where I'm going with this, because ultimately I'll be making sculptural pieces using the same technique. And a good way to make a slab. Pizza, right? This is how you make pizza, isn't it? You can roll this out so it's fairly even thickness. Then it's just a question about dropping it into the mold. I usually don't do this with an audience, so it's a private affair. Okay, wait a little while. And this will dry right into the mold.
I may be jumping ahead, but when you have your pieces, do you have them leather hard before you assemble them?
Yes, you'll see that this will, you'll see what happens next. So, if I leave this in the mold overnight, it will become rather hard. And I do want each segment that way. Are you following me?
Yeah.
So,
What
here's
clay
one.
is this?
Huh?
What clay is this?
That's a secret. A secret mix.
Okay.
No, it's just, I mix my own clay.
It's this color.
How do you mix,
It comes right out.
how do
It's
you mix
leather
it? Do you
hard.
have a mixer, a bug mill?
Yeah, I gotta mix it. It's like making a cake.
He's a pro.
So there it is. There's one segment out of this piece. But you can see if I come back in a couple of hours, I'll be able to pick this right out. And then if I have all 4 or 5 pieces, it's very easy to assemble. Just scratch in and put some mud in there. You've all done this, right? And then stick them together.
Flip it.
And I'll show you what you get. I can make many of these, but I usually only make one. I don't know why. It's not so much time just to make one. But this is the final piece.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So it's made that way.
How's it decorated? Is that underglazes?
Pardon?
Underglazes paint?
I don't know, well, it's got different glazes. It's a secret. No. Some of them are bought, some of them I've mixed them.
And the clear glaze, what color do you fire?
No.
What color do you fire? Is that a secret too?
5, 6.
So these are different glazes, right?
Oh, isn't that cool? Because it's a nice piece, and that's,
Some of them
all
are
these segments will fit right in there nicely.
And you have holes in there for blood glazes? I think there's, yeah, it's a mixture. Do you use a clear overall?
No.
Or? No.
No.
No?
No.
Yes.
No, these are, the red is a store-bought. I can't get red in my kiln. This is my mix.
What's the, is it Amigo, Mako, what?
It's stroke and coat, I think.
Stroke and coat. That's what I
The
mean.
stroke and coat is good. I mean, you can go along. It's a real great, this is my mix. and This is my
This is in a gas
variation.
kiln?
That might be why.
It's in a gas kiln?
Yeah. It's reduction. So it's cool.
Very nice.
Just took a long time to evolve into something.
Very nice,
Let me show you some of the, before I reach this point, I think I started a little late, but before I reach this point, let's put on the first slide.
Get the pad. Sorry, the computer's asleep.
I did a lot of work before I reached this.
Is this
Let me
the
see
first
if I
one?
can show you.
Are they in numbered order?
So is the video still on?
It is.
I just stopped.
Can you all see this?
Yeah.
Can you? Each one of these is a different method that I tried. I was really interested in making sculptural pieces. So this method, this first method, we all know, right? They take a piece of clay, you cut it in half, and you scoop out
Right.
the clay, stick it together. And, you know. The second method, I got involved with wax. So I made my armature, whatever you want to call it, and coated it with wax. These are strips of wax, or cloth dipped in hot wax. And then I would put my clay around the outside of that and put in a heat lamp. And I'd heat the wax out.
So what's the core in number 2?
This
The
one,
first drawing, what's the middle?
the wire,
Well, okay.
and the wire, and then the wax wrap around the wire, and then the clay figure, whatever I wanted to make, and then the light. But you can see the problem with this is the heat from the lamp would tend to dry the clay, and the clay would have a tendency to shrink, and it was a struggle. What's the third method?
Rigid
Oh, there's a third method. This is pretty cool. If you take rigid foam and then make your clay form out there, you can get rid of the rigid foam by some kind of chemical, acetone or something. And you can just, I don't know, just take the cone out. You've seen what happens with rigid plastic and acetone. It just eats it right up. And the fourth method, this goes back in history, so there were many struggles. I made the armature out of wire. I wrapped the armature in wax, and then I wired it with what you call magnet wire, which is wire that's coated. So I wrapped the whole form in wire, and then put a current on the wire and melted the wax up. Well, it seems like that should work, right? It's going to work. But what happens is that the arms have a tendency to maybe fall off. So you can see there was a struggle between getting the right heat to melt the wax out, but not affecting the clay. So those are these trials that I did, and finally, after years of doing this stuff, I arrived at something that seemed to work, and work well, and that was this method. And then we'll get into some of the designs that I made with, we'll do that later. But this method would work with making some very intricate designs. And I'll show you. I made my original in clay and then packed the plaster of Paris around the clay into segments. And these are 2 segments. Maybe there's 3. So now I have the 2 segments with the clay form inside that I just pick up and throw away. And then put my clay in here. Just put my flat clay right inside. And what I come out with is a fairly intricate design that I don't think you could arrive at any other way. So this is the inside. This is my,
It has feet.
and this is the other
So you
part.
add the hand after?
And then I did the hand separate.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
No way could I, so this is it, this is the, let's go through, because it's tall, and it's, I don't know.
Can you turn this way,
Maybe a
Bill?
½ inch thick.
Bill,
Turn like.
turn, hold it up and turn this way for the video.
So that's it. And you might say that, well, you can't get very intricate with this, but I did. And using the same method, let's look at some pieces that I made.
Sorry, I just have to sort out the,
Bill, where did you get plaster of Paris? Is that, I don't.
Oh, any place, any
Hardware
hardware
store,
store.
just like it comes in a bag, you add water in there. and
12,
water?
15 bucks a bag.
Okay, because I've never played with it. Wow.
Now, these pieces are
A decor.
2 feet high, 19, 20 inches high, so they're not small pieces. That's made in segments. Obviously, the sword, or the, whatever he's holding there. That's not very clear, is it?
no, sorry.
It's a little-
It's all right, make it bigger.
But you got the idea, right?
No, I'm sorry. I would like to, but whenever I hit expand on the screen, it disappears off the picture plane for some reason. I think we need a more modern LCD projector, but that's for another meeting.
Well, the boots and the legs are made separately.
Oh, okay.
And the wings and the head are made separately. There's no way it can move.
Did it take
What's-
two that we added on?
What is the height?
Yeah, then add it on.
Yeah.
What
Add
is
it
the
on
height?
with a good epoxy.
Uh-huh.
And there are some wonderful epoxies out there that are
What-
as strong as the ceramic themselves.
Is there a brand you could recommend for epoxy?
Gorilla.
Gorilla. Thank you.
What is the measurement scale there at the bottom, the 1, 2, 3, 4?
Inches?
That's inches, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's probably
20 inches?
16, 18 inches tall. And that's my Kente man. He's got Kente cloth.
Wow.
That didn't come out very clear. They're a little sharper than that. But the feet are made separately, and the chair on the background is made separately.
Bill, what's your process? Do you draw?
Pardon?
Do you draw when you're starting out with an idea for a sculpture? Is it something you've drawn?
Oh, yeah, I make sketches of
Yeah. So
And then I,
then,
yeah,
that
so
leads
I got
you
some
to-
idea of the physical measurements. This is a nice piece. It's hard to see because, you know, there's a lot going on.
it's
But
three-dimensional.
this was made from maybe 3 or 4 plaster of Paris pieces. One for the front that you can see, and probably one for the back of the arm, and then another one maybe for part of the head.
How tall is she?
How did you fire it?
So, pardon?
How did you fire it in the kiln?
Yeah, it fired is kind of tricky. It lays on it, not lays on its side, but it lays on the skirt, on the bottom of the skirt. And
Yeah, right.
firing that high, you have to be concerned about the arms dropping, you know, melting.
Right.
Because I'm close to a melt at cone 5, 6. And, but my clay, I design my own clay, so I've got a pretty good idea of what it can withstand when it starts to fall apart. But if it's in a hot part of the kiln, I'm going to get a melt. And that's part of the game, you know? Sometimes it's awful when you put in, you know, 4 or 5 weeks on something like that and it comes out into a gob.
She
The
could
left arm is twisted over the
She could
head.
come up with a new dance move for you.
But listen, I got the mold, so I can make, probably I can make 1,000 of these, right? And reglaze them. I mean, I got the mold, so. And that's kind of interesting. But whether you want to make 10 or 20 pieces like this, I don't know. Oh, that's Nijinsky.
Yes. Wow.
Nijinsky was a dancer in the turn of the century. And he was quite a guy. He lost his mind when he was 26, and he was institutionalized, but he was a well-known dancer. And the bottom is made separate from the top. So there were 2 or 3 molds for the top, and for the bottom, maybe 2.
Excuse me, what kind of metal are you using to mount that to the block on the bottom?
I have a wire through his foot.
Like what kind of wire to accommodate?
Well, the steel wire.
The steel wire?
Yeah, if you buy a drill, you'll find that it's hardened steel and it makes a good support. Because you have to be careful that it doesn't snap the thread. No, it has to be,
Yeah, no, they're sizable pieces too, so there's some considerable weight there for
Yeah.
the wire down, delicate on the bottom like that.
I think this might be one of those long drills that you can buy, a spade drill. So it's hardened steel and it doesn't want to flex.
Yeah, okay, nice.
The point I'm trying to make is that, I spent a lot of time in the wheel. I made a lot of pieces on the wheel. I did a lot of work in glazes, but I always wanted to make sculptural pieces. I really did. That was a goal of mine. And so this method works. I don't know if anybody else does it this way, but if you're interested in doing any sculptural pieces, it's the only way to go. And if you got problems, you can come and see me. Right? You want me out, I'll help you out.
Could you ever make a piece out of clay, biscuit, and then that's your mold? Lay the clay over the biscuit
I guess you could.
instead of plaster, making it out of clay,
Oh,
just
well,
biscuit.
he's letting his forms in, so that as they shrink, they're not gonna shrink over a hard form and break. So you would have to do it
The other way, just laying it over rather than
laying it in.
Right.
Yeah. But Deb
He's
Schwarzkopf
working with plasters.
lays over.
No,
and she just cuts
plaster
it.
Plaster Paris is cheap,
She's working
and
on
it's easy to work with.
Yeah.
I use my hands, I just go in the pail with water and I mean, it's kind of messy, but, hey, so is clay, right? What you gonna do? It's a mess. I tried pouring. This, I think, was my first attempt, one of my first attempts at pouring a mold. Taking this out, putting the mold together, and then just pouring in a slip. Waiting 20 minutes or an hour and pouring it back out. Boy, that's a real pain in the ass because that always doesn't work. Sometimes you get sagging. You really have to be good. Your mix has to be good. Your timing has to be
That's a
good.
whole other.
It's a whole, yeah, it's another ball game, and it's a tough one. And this is there's no guesswork here. It's you put in the clay, cut it out, and that's it. But you have to know your clay. When you fire it in a kiln, it's a good idea to know what you're doing. And you can buy it from the ceramic supply, but you don't really know what the clay is going to do unless you do testing. You can get a bar of clay, see if it sags at certain temperatures. But it's tough. I've mixed up my own clay for years, so I know what I have and I know how it works.
Do you have a Soldner mixer?
A what?
A Soldner, one of those that's got the bars on the inside? Is that the kind of mixer, clay mixer?
Oh, no, I got a big tub that I just got a motor I tied to a wooden paddle.
Okay.
And I can make 200-300 pounds of clay in there. So, and then I got a pug mill, which you really need, pug out the air. And, let's go clay, if you want to feel it, it's really great stuff. It's good. Okay, folks, that's it.
Thank you.